where we are going to look into and see if we can actually make the argument that why relocating employees can be better for the planet. But let's get started. My name is Jesper Lovendal, and I am the CEO and founder of ExpatRide. ExpatRide is a company that was founded in 2011. We have 100% focus on the needs of the global mobility industry, meaning that we don't work outside of the industry. Everything we do is tailored and designed for the industry. We have offices in Copenhagen, where I am, and in Manila, where we have operations and marketing, in Miami, where our headquarters is with operations, and in Prague, where we have our operation and sustainability team. We are on a mission to lower CO2 impact of global assignments, and we'll talk to you a bit about this today, because we feel that over the years we've expanded from only covering the US with car services to covering globally with car leasing, chauffeur services, airport transfers, car rental, bus and coach service, anything on four wheels and up. And what they all have in common is that they send out a lot of CO2, which we're not proud of being part of. So we made a conscious decision some years ago where we said we need to do better, and we created our EcoRide program, with is a program focused on more environmentally friendlier transportation services across the globe, and we expanded from that, looking into what can we do at ExpatRide and why should we care. As I said, we acknowledge the role that we have as part of the climate problem, but we also wanted to expand further outside of our own scope of services and our own offices, so that we didn't just look at our own footprint, but also the services that we deliver and the assignees that we support on assignment. So we've read a lot of ESG reports, sustainability reports, both within the industry and outside of the industry. And what we found is that it seems everybody's like kind of like just looking within. So we thought, okay, let's expand the scope a little bit and look outside. Let's take a more holistic view on the impact that we have as a global mobility industry, and the positive influence that we can all make when we do this together and collaborate on it. So this year we really made a sustainable effort in doing more and looking outside of our own scope. So we started with hiring a sustainability manager. We got our certifications in place with ISO. We are working with EcoRide certification. I have entered the WRC Sustainability Advisory Council to learn more, also to provide ideas. We finished our white paper. We call it 1.0, Driving Sustainability, that we came out with in May, that shared a lot of our ideas about a holistic view on global mobility. And that sparked even more ideas and need for more knowledge, because the more you know you don't know. So it's like a rabbit hole of seeking more and more information. And what we try to do at ExpatRide is that we want to share that information. That's as soon as we get it in, we want to share it and pass it on to inspire others, which is also the reason for this webinar today, is that we want to share what we also already found before we even launch our white paper 2.0 by the end of this month. Hopefully we'll have that together, where there's going to be some of the conclusions and information that you'll see in addition to those of you who may have read the first white paper that we came with. We've written several articles on the subject, both for our own blog and for others, and we have had meetings with the WRC, FIDI, CIRC, and APRA in terms of what it is that we do and how we can assist each other, and just knowledge sharing and talking and saying things out loud to kind of like get ideas and expand on that. Next week or the week after, I'll be at the GWS, the ERC event in Maryland, where I'll be the moderator of a sustainability session, Sustainability and Mobility Industry, Now, the Future, and the New Normal. So drop by, and we have a great panel that we'll be discussing a lot of things with in terms of sustainability, but more importantly, how to get started. What are the first step in actually making yourself ready for this, especially as a supplier. And if you're there, then shoot me an email and let's have a coffee if you have time. But moving into the agenda of today, and by the way, write any questions you may have in the chat, and I'll address them at the end of the presentation. You'll also receive a copy of this PDF, presentation in PDF format. We'll send them out tomorrow so that if there are slides that I go past a little bit fast, because we do have a lot of slides to get through in the next 43 minutes with 10 minutes left for questions, then you'll have a chance to go back and read them, and then shoot me an email if you have any questions as well. So we'll be first setting the kind of like the groundwork for why is this needed, the pollution, the CO2 emissions, how it's happening, the impact of our industry, looking at it from a more holistic, getting that broader perspective on the challenges and our opportunities, the motivations to do more for sustainability, the psychology of changing habits and how difficult or easy it is under certain circumstances, and what unique opportunity we have in this industry that we're all in. A three-step plan how to implement a sustainability program, and then talking about us as an industry, and of course finishing off on making the argument that under the right circumstances, it can actually be better for the planet to relocate a person than not to relocate. So that's what we're ending on as we progress through the presentation here. But I wanted to set the stage with the quote that we have in our white paper 1.0. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. So let's not wait for somebody else to save it. Let's see what we can do together as we collaborate and make this impact that I think you'll see that we actually have a much greater than many people might think that we actually are capable of. So looking at the industry and of transportation, because we are moving people around, and moving stuff around is definitely not good, whether we are moving yourself to work and back, or you're moving furniture from one place to another place. Cars, agriculture, and construction are the three major polluters and CO2 emitting industries of the world. Cars and vans account for about 10% of the global CO2 emissions. So we at Expat Ride are definitely part of the problem. So we want to see if we can do better. And you'll see some examples of that as we go along. By the way, we are very much focused on cars. So when you see a car example and you're a supplier, please use that opportunity to think about your own services and how you could maybe do the same calculation, or be creative about how to find solutions and present them in a similar fashion as we're doing with the cars examples that we do here. It is what we're good at, so that's why we tend to use that as an example. CO2 emission is one part of the problem, but pollution, especially coming out of cars and trucks and tuk-tuks, what have you, is a problem that is already here and it's been lingering for a year. It's causing lung diseases. It lowers the life expectancy of many. So it's not just lowering the CO2 emission, but it's also just cleaning up our air. An example of that was a city near the Himalayas in India, which during lockdown, during COVID, actually for the first time in 20 to 30 years, saw the Himalayas because the sky cleared up just within days after stopping from people stopping moving around in the lockdown. So it doesn't take that much to clear up the sky, but of course we can't just stop transporting ourselves around from day one to the other. So, but there is the opportunity to actually make a difference also on the air quality. So looking at the global mobility industry as a whole, is this something that will just take care of itself by the global mobility industry declining and vanishing because it's not needed because everybody's working from home now? Or is there growth and still an urgency for us to actually take actions? And the good news for us as part of the industry is that there is growth perspective, and it's expected that the industry will grow at least 7% over the next 6 years, North America remaining the largest corporate relocation market, and Asia Pacific, the fastest growing market. And there will be a higher need for policy administration, counseling, and also, of course, on sustainability initiative, which will expand the scope of consulting even further over the years. And what you'll also see is that we'll probably see, hopefully, a diminishing of lump sum um, um, moves as well, because they're really not sustainable, as we'll show in the coming slides. So as I said, in the white paper that we came out, where we took this more holistic view of not just looking at our own services, but looking at the assignment cyclus as a whole, from the beginning to the impact to the continuation. So we see people moving out, we're settling in them in more sustainable. We are teaching them, we're supporting them, and hopefully we can then send them on their way back or onwards in a more sustainable fashion, and then thereby having less of an impact on the environment. And we'll go through this, how we can accomplish this together. But looking at the big polluters or big CO2 emitters during an assignment, there is, of course, the airplanes, if that is needed. Then there's the trucks, the ships. And with those two categories, which airplanes, there's about a 10% reduction in the short run. For trucks, 15 to 18%, in ships in the short run. There needs to be a quantum leap in terms of technology to actually make a huge difference when it comes to those services. Whereas with homes that people live in on a daily basis, there are high opportunities to 30% reduction when it comes to recycling, using renewable energy, your habits within your home in terms of how much heat you use and water and so forth. And then, of course, with transportation, the daily transportation on assignment being the big one, where you can obtain up to 65% reduction, and even more if you start, of course, using public transportation, biking or walking. But if you do need a car, then up to 65% reduction in average. I like this quote to kind of like set the stage as well for what we're focusing on here. Do not wait for extraordinary circumstances to do good action. Try to use ordinary situations. This is Jean-Paul Richter. And it is what we're focusing on here. It's the daily life on location for the assignees. Their everyday emission of CO2 that we will focus on, and where the greatest impact really lies. Not so much the move from A to B when moving them out, but actually life on location. So what are the different motivations for companies in terms of sustainability? What are pushing them to actually take action other than doing better for the planet? And there are 4 different aspects that we have zoomed in on here. It's regulations, it's talents, customers, and competitiveness. The motivation for, in terms of regulatory framework, there's 2 bodies. There is the CSRD legislation from the EU. I'm sure you've all heard of scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and scope 3 emission being the big one that everybody's focusing on as we move forward, and then RA in the US. And those are the 2 regulatory bodies that are kind of like setting the stage. A lot of people waiting for IRA to see kind of like come out with what they are going to focus on and what their limits are. But the EU have already launched their details and their time limits on when bigger corporations will need to meet the scope 3 emission standards and standards for reporting as well. On average, a company have 90% of its CO2 emission is caused by their suppliers, their production company, services, travel, and so on outside of the company. So for a company like Lego, the toy company, it's 99% of their scope 3 emission, CO2 emission is actually caused by their supplier chain. So there's a lot to be focused on. There's a lot to get your head around as a big company, and there's a lot that we can do as an industry to support those efforts, as you'll see as we move forward. So what we have done at EcoRide is kind of like look at what are the chances for the CSRD becoming the regulatory body that we all follow. There's 2 aspects to it. One is that any major corporation, whether you are an Asian headquartered or South American headquartered, African headquartered, North American headquartered. If you have a large presence in the EU with employees and certain amount of revenue, then you will have to adhere to the EU regulations, no matter where you're headquartered. So that's for one. And then we also looked at a similar situation. Then GDPR is a really good example of where the rest of the world just went, okay, these are the strictest standards for data protection security, so we'll follow that. It doesn't make any sense for us to make separate websites, separate rules, depending on what country people are visiting our websites or where we're delivering our services. We're going to go with the strictest standard, and in the expecting that many other countries will follow eventually. So we see the same happening for the Scope 3 emission. The CSRD is that it will be the regulatory laws to be followed by many corporations around the world, and thereby also enforcing those compliance and data reporting upon us as suppliers to them. Scope 3 and international assignments, well, does it even matter? Is an international assignment Scope 3? And again, we've researched this, and everything that we find points to the fact that it will count as Scope 3, because if you go on a business travel out representing your company to make money or make a difference for your company, then that is in the company's interest. The same thing happens when you're sending not just a person but a whole family to another country, in order to that company to gain from that relocation, having that person and their family present in that country. It does come with the motivation of making a profit, innovation, research development, whatever it is that the company can gain from that relocation. It then also does count as their Scope 3 emission, and has to be reported and owned by the company, meaning that we'll have to report it. So that was one motivation. That was the regulatory thing. The other ones we're going to spend a little bit less time on as we move forward. But talent attraction is a big one in terms of also motivation. 42% of millennials and Gen Zs have changed job or plan to do so due to climate concerns, meaning that they're looking at their employer and going, I don't really feel that you're doing enough, and I don't want that to reflect on me as a person because I care. 50% of them are pushing their employer to make environmental improvements. So what we're seeing with the Gen Zs and the millennials is that they want this authenticity from their employers. They want to see actions. They don't want to see lip service. They don't want to see greenwashing. They look right through it. They want sustainability efforts to move out of marketing and into operation, where it can take practical actions, and that could be measured. So it matters to them. And so this quote here from Betty Bender makes very much sense when it comes to the younger generations, and hopefully also us old schoolers. But when people go to work, they shouldn't have to leave their hearts at home. And the young people really take their hearts with them to work. So if you want to retain them, then you need to show action. Customers. If you're looking at customers, so over the last 4 years, where companies have focused on sustainability contributions, they have seen an increase in 20% in brand growth, meaning that the loyalty of customers are increasing for corporations that are more pro-environmental. So it does also reflect in the customers' preferences. And when we look at competitiveness and where the money is spent, where the money is invested, then we're also seeing that the money also talks in the favor of more sustainable focused companies, where 57% of investors say that their interest in sustainability investing increased over the past 2 years. So money is also flowing that way, which is really comforting as well. Now, in our white paper 1.0, as we call it, there was a professor with research that we referenced to, the Professor Bas van Planken. And his research really sparked some ideas with us here as Expat Ride to further expand on that. So what we did was we actually hired the professor to work with us on the white paper 2.0 to get his input and feedback, and and test some of the assumptions that we had at ExpatWide in terms of the global mobility industry and the effect that it could positively have on people's habit changes towards more sustainable lifestyles. And connecting that academic research with cases in global mobility and a sort of opportunity to actually make this change in the first month of relocation. And what the professor said is that changing our habits is very difficult, including finding the right moment to make a change. Moving home disrupts the stability that reinforces old habits, creating an opportunity for new behaviors. He also said that there are two moments in life that are really good for changing your habits. And one is a little bit dramatic. It's you go to your doctor. Doctor says you got 6 months left to live unless you make the following life changes, and then you can live as long as you would have expected to. And then when you move, and especially when you make an international move, then you're really open mentally for changing habits. In the white paper, we refer to a study that the professor worked on and research on, and what his research paper was built upon. And that is a study done in across 800 households in Peterborough in the UK. This is 15 years ago. No, sorry, 11 years ago. So where sustainability options were a little bit less than they are now even. They researched 400 households that had recently relocated and 400 that hadn't, and the 400 had been where they had lived for more than 5 years. Then they tested them on 25 different types of environmental habits in the area of water, waste, transport, energy use. So shorter showers, recycling, turning down the heat, walking, cycling instead of driving, and so forth across these different. And they had different test groups where some didn't receive any support, and others received an intervention, as they call it. And the intervention was that they would walk up to these households, knock on the door, introduce themselves, and an NGO, saying that we would like to help you out with living more sustainable. Would you like to hear more? And if they were interested, then they would do a personal interview. They would do a selection of sustainable items that fit that household and tailor some information and then general information, and then sign them up for a newsletter. And what they saw was that after the 8 weeks of testing, that the ones that had moved recently was more likely and had actually taken on sustainable habits versus the one that hadn't moved, which hadn't really moved that much in terms of their habits, was very stuck in their old ways. And what they also found with this research was that there's a bigger result within the first 3 months of relocating versus after that period where people were more set in their ways and where their habits in their new place had established themselves. So providing sustainability support before the relocation and by an employer should result in even greater positive impact, which is the situation that we are in. We're not just an NGO walking up to a house after they moved. We can actually foresee these moves and support the assignees even before that happens. And when it comes to supporting the assignees before that happens, we also have to consider that people are different. So people are not just all the same. People are not just going, oh, sustainability, I'm in. No, people have different habits and preferences. And so what the professor shared with us is this model here, that where they divided the people into 4 categories. A being to the upper left, high potential, but not motivated. B, which is the good group, is highly motivated and high potential. And then we have the lower left, which is low potential, not motivated. You can do whatever you want. I'm not doing it. And then the third group is D, low potential, but motivated. So in order to make sure that we get them all on board, we can't just leave it up to saying, you should really do this, and then hope they do it. So we need to make sure that our policies align with the company goals, so ESG goals. We need to educate and support them. We need to deliver green relocation packages, which I know many RMCs already have in place. And then in certain cases, we need to instruct and mandate certain activities and choices to make sure that they don't continue doing bad for the planet. And in many cases, when it comes to sustainable habits, it's not because it's harder, it's not because it's more difficult, it's just a change of habits in many cases. And so instructing might sound harsh, but in most cases, I don't think people even notice it. In addition to all of these more practical initiatives, there's also the fact that we saw that with the millennials and the Gen Zs, they bring their hearts with them to work, but they also bring their hearts into a relocation and the impact that they'll have on the environment, making that move, moving all that stuff across the planet. So they want to feel good about it, and in supporting the assignees, showing them this will not cause damage, that they might even be living more sustainable, increases their mental well-being. It increases their the employee satisfaction. It empowers them in a way of sustainable living, so that they actually feel that they have a positive social impact on their surroundings and feeling more in balance with their move. So it also causes more well-being and less stress. Now, I mentioned some policies, I mentioned some training in the previous slides, and then there's the relocation support, which we all are part of, whether we are sitting in Global Mobility HR, or we are an RMC, or we are a supplier to the RMCs. And we at ExpertRide are not going to make ourselves experts on policies and sustainability training and RMC work. So I'll leave that up to the experts. And for the policy part of it, we partnered with Mobility Mastery in order to get their feedback and input on how to write a more sustainable policy. And Mobility Mastery provides knowledge-based global mobility management with tailored solutions handling all aspects of cross-border workforce operations with focus on policy implementation. And the founder of Mobility Mastery, Dennis, has worked with the global mobility teams in the global mobility teams at Bacardi and Capgemini, and has been part of rewriting and implementing new policies, and of course everything that goes into the global mobility HR work. And he came up with this kind of like little guideline, and of course you can contact Dennis for more input and brainstorming with him. You'll get his email at the end of this presentation. But he said, incorporate your company's ESG and sustainability goals into the assignment policy so that it mirrors what the company does, not only within, but also externally when they're sending people around the world. Assess your current policies, make sure that they align. Of course, partner with an RMC that can support and brainstorm on alternatives for greener relocations and life on location, and instruct the assignees on certain choices. Leverage the data-driven carbon reporting, which the RMCs can assist you with, and educate your assignees on sustainability. And educating your assignees is key in making this happen, because sustainability is all about knowledge sharing, education, pushing ourselves to a higher level, a higher standard of delivering greener impact for the planet. And so what I'm doing right now is hopefully inspiring and educating, knowledge sharing, and we should do the same for the assignees before and after they move. And for this purpose, we partnered with People Mobility Alliance, a German-based company. And People Mobility Alliance is an international consulting company specializing in providing strategic consulting services, focusing on business transformation, combining global mindset and innovative tech ecosystems to improve organizations and people's performance. And so they do leadership training, they do cultural awareness training, and now they're also starting to do sustainability training. And as one of the founders, Professor Dr. Stefan, said, sustainability awareness training is foundational for integrating sustainable practices into the global mobility industry, and most importantly, to help international assignees understand the broader context of what it is that they're walking into. And what the program at Stefan's company has set in terms of steps to implement and share this education is that we start with a pre-relocation training, company goals, industry context, and then training on the in-location, localized sustainable practices, what are possible, what is cultural sustainable activities in that country, and soon after relocation, contextualizing that environmental impact by actual practical showing them and helping them set up these habits and services, products, whatever it may be. And then even more importantly, once you've done all that so that it doesn't go to waste, is that before repatriation training on sustainability, because the thing with habits is that they have a tendency to come back hard. And so you may have moved away from your habits, but if you move back to the same place where you came from, those old habits will take a grab of you if you're not aware, and if you don't try to prevent it and enforce your new, more sustainable habits. So it's important also to train and educate people on the fact that they may slip back into their old habits if they're moving back. But of course, what we're also creating here are sustainability ambassadors when they go through this training that can influence others as well beyond the industry and beyond our scope here. I found this quote by Simon Sinek: when people are financially invested, they want a return. When people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute. And that's what we see in the Gen Zs, is that they take their heart with them to work, and they don't want to be necessarily financially compensated, because some of them, if you read the slide, are actually willing to go down in salary in order to have purpose and be part of a more sustainable company. So they want to be emotionally invested, and they want to contribute. Relocation support, and now we get to the broader scope of the industry as a whole. And I want to take this opportunity actually to thank the industry for being actually existing at this point, because everything that I'm talking about in terms of actually for us to make a difference is the decades of refining what is the global mobility industry today, and our ability to actually make an impact of hundreds of thousands of people that we move on an annual basis and setting them on a more sustainable lifestyle. And what is interesting about sustainability is that it's the first thing that we've actually in the industry united around, where we're actually driving collaborations, and most visually shown by the bigger industries coming together for the Coalition for Greener Mobility, being FIDI, WRC, EuroCirc, IAM, CHPA, forming a coalition where they share ideas, they share standards, and they try to communicate as one towards the industry instead of working in silos, which has been very common in the past. We're also seeing strategic value from the global mobility HR actually being able to deliver and being part of delivering on the ESG goals of their corporation, because sending people out, creating these sustainable ambassadors around the world is not only for the assignees themselves, but they also go out and influence people in the locations that they go out and work in, and the teams that they work in, with this new knowledge that has been invested in them, and the fact that they now are obtaining new habits. So very much thank you for everybody who's been before us in setting up a platform where we can actually truly make a difference, as you'll see in the coming slides here. And one of the key things to making this difference is the RMCs. The RMCs infrastructure is built for sustainability. They have expert coordination. They have a supply chain that they know it's vetted. It's a supply chain that is compliant with the global standards of their corporate clients, a tailoring solution according to their needs, and it's data-driven decision, which has been for years. But now we can also take that data in terms of CO2 emission reports and report those upwards to the corporate so that they can make even more better choices moving forward in terms of sustainability, and the RMCs can then support not only the corporates in doing so, but also support their suppliers in going and moving in the right direction in terms of more sustainable efforts and lowering the carbon footprint as a result of that. So kudos to the industry. Thank you. And when we're looking at what are the major reduction factors that can be done on an assignment, it's the homes, what goes on in the home, the insulation of the home, the energy used in the home, it's the recycling opportunities. And of course, many of these things are available in North America, in Europe, Japan, Singapore, Australia, countries like those, Korea. Whereas it might not be that available in most other countries where recycling is not a thing of such yet, but it's something that you maybe be able to subscribe to in certain countries. But one thing that is available everywhere is more sustainable, more eco-friendly vehicles. At a minimum, hybrids. You can get hybrids cars anywhere in the world, whether that be Lagos, Nigeria, or it be Peru. You can obtain more sustainable vehicles. So there is a lot of things that we can do on locations, and I encourage you all, if you're a supplier to the industry, then look at everything that you're doing and start calculating and being creative on how to lower the CO2 emission of the services that you provide. And the impact of these small decisions and made a decision done on assignment are really, truly significant. And it's not small numbers that we're talking about here. And I'm reverting back to cars because that's what we know. But here's an example, and I'll walk you through it so that this calculation makes sense for you. So we're taking an assignee and we're moving them, that person from New Orleans, the US, to Birmingham, UK, meaning that we'll send their stuff across the pond and drive it down to Liverpool, from Liverpool and down, and then send it all the way back again at the end of this 2-year assignment. That will cost 4.1 ton of CO2 in emission sending it out and sending this 40-foot container back. Now, if we make a conscious decision when we send this assignee to the UK for 2 years, just on the vehicle that they're driving, so we switch that out from a fossil fuel cars to an electric car, that will save 5.8 ton of CO2 during that 2-year assignment that will not be emitted, meaning that we're basically saving 1.7 ton for something else. Not that that's the purpose, but we're in quotation marks and with all the disclaimers, we're offsetting the whole move of a 40-foot container back and forth between continents just by the choice in transportation. And if, of course, we could go with, instead of having 2 cars, then 1 car, or no cars and a bicycle, then it would be even more impactful. And then accumulating that out across all the different things and habits on assignment that is being done on a daily basis, accumulating those reductions up, whether it's smart homes or it's recycling or it's taking shorter showers, whatever it is, then that becomes significant. And when you then take one person and multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of people that we move on an annual basis, it becomes a lot. So quoting a true capitalist, Warren Buffett, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. And that's what I really feel personally about the global mobility industry. Global mobility industry foundation now puts us in a situation where we can actually do better. And in doing so, I talked about lump sum, and we're not being a true fan of it anymore. And I think that lump sum should truly go away, because here at Expat Ride, we come to the conclusion, and that's also backed by the professor, is that lump sum equals sustainability failure, meaning that there's no control. The companies lose oversight of leading to unsustainable, misaligning spending with ESG goals. So not matching. If you just let them run loose. There's no control. There's no guidance in terms of making eco-friendly decisions. There's no reporting because you don't know where the money was used. So there's no tracking of this vital data to show sustainability efforts and efficiency. Regulatory compliance risk is something to be considered. Talent retention, looking at the younger people and their preferences for living sustainable and not having an impact, not taking this lightly would also reflect on their view on their employer, and of course the increased stress. Going back to mental health and the support and the well-being of feeling supported and being more sustainable, and the positives that have. So in a nutshell, we don't really think that lump sum is really good for the planet. It needs more. The assignees should get more support and more education in making the right decisions. So we are only about 5-6 minutes away from the end of the presentation, if not even that much. And then we'll have 10 minutes for questions at the end. So please start writing them. Or if you prefer, you can just unmute and speak out loud when we get to it. To give you an example of the tagline of this webinar, where we're saying that it may be better to relocate a person than not to relocate them for the environment. I'm giving you an example here in a car example, but the next slide would be the exact same, just with an assignee. So bear with me as I go through this, because there's a point to be made here. So in the production of a fossil fuel car, it actually requires less energy than an electric car. So if you just produce the two vehicles and just left them standing there, not ever driving them, the fossil fuel car is better for the environment than the electric car. Now, if you drive an electric car for 2 years, that will offset not only the production of the vehicle, but also the recycling of the vehicle. So including the batteries that many sometimes talk about, that is the bad part. And so it's not worth driving a fossil fuel car. That'll actually eliminate itself after 2 years of driving it. And then after that 2 years on average, it could happen within 1 to 3 years, by the way. But on average 2 years, then it's better for the planet. Whereas the fossil fuel car just keeps doing bad for the average of 20 years that a car have a life expectancy of. So just continues bad, whereas the electric car actually becomes better for the planet even after 2 years already. Now, same thing with an assignee that we don't move. They continue their maybe unsustainable lifestyle. There's no reason for them to change their habits. They may want to change their habit, but it's difficult. Whereas the person that we're relocating, we start out by being bad in terms of moving them, putting all their stuff on a truck, on a ship, putting them on airplanes, shipping them across the world. That does cost a lot of CO2 up front. However, if we install them more sustainable, install education and provide them with the tools so the everyday life that doesn't emit as much CO2, then we're setting them on a much greener path. So we are fast tracking them to a more sustainable life that their clone, if we could clone people that stayed home, wouldn't be able to obtain. And at the same time, we're creating sustainable ambassadors that hopefully will go out and have a positive influence on others to also change their ways drastically or in smaller details. But anyways, having a positive influence on others. So in conclusion, relocation we see as a catalyst for change. Global mobility is uniquely positioned to drive sustainable change through relocation initiatives. Life cycle approach to relocation, so taking this more holistic view on the not just the move itself, but the assignment and the installing of habits in the assignees, supporting employees before, during, and after relocation. A sustainability-driven policy, so making sure that updating your policies, if you're in HR, to reflect your ESG goals, to support your assignees in living more sustainable on assignment, and providing them with the training and education in understanding, and also going beyond the education in terms of that sustainability, and then we're having the industry as a provider of a greener future. If you haven't downloaded the white paper yet, then you can click this link once you get the PDF that we'll send out tomorrow. And what we saw also before we're like 2-3 minutes away from the end, just bear with me here. What we also saw in a lot of the ESG reports was that everybody talks about trees. Everybody loves to plant trees, and planting trees is amazing. We should plant millions and billions of trees actually to offset the CO2. But when I talked to our sustainability manager, Pavla, about this, about the trees and planting trees and making calculations that could illustrate the results in terms of not just CO2 tons saved, but actual trees, she's like, but what type of trees are you talking about, Jesper? Are we talking about just planted trees about this big? Are we talking about a 300-year-old old oak? What are we talking about? And so we looked at when does a tree actually start sucking CO2 out of the air through its leaves? And it's about 10 years old, and it's mature around 20 years old. So the tree numbers that I'm showing you here is in terms of trees that are 20 years old. And if we look at moving 100,000 assignees, which is about 10% of what the industry moves on an annual basis, if we move them from fossil fuel cars into electric cars, and you can pretty much have that number if it's hybrid cars, give or take. But if we put them into electric cars, then we'll save about 29 million trees. Well, saving is 29 million trees we won't need for offset for sucking out the CO2. So it'll cost 37. It'll take 37 million trees to suck out the CO2 from the air from driving, from 100,000 assignees driving a petrol car for a year versus about 9 million trees for 100,000 assignees driving an electric car for a year. So it is significant. And I don't think anybody has ever written an ESG report that is talking about trees in the millions. They're talking about trees in the thousands. So, and that's their own personal influence. But if we multiply that out across all the assignees and their every daily life on assignment, it becomes huge numbers. And this is just cars, right? This is not their homes. This is not recycling. This is not all the other environmentally sane habits. And if they'd even better not having a car. I mean, you could equal this to maybe just 1 million trees, depending on if they're taking the bus or so. That is needed. So the impact is significant. And I'm going to end here on the second last slide with a quote from Spider-Man's uncle, who said to Spider-Man, "With great power comes great responsibility." And I really feel that we have a unique opportunity in the global mobility industry to not only tenfold, but maybe even in some situations hundredfold our own personal effort in channelizing that out through the assignees to make a huge impact beyond what we each can do at home as well. And how can expat rights then support you if you're an RMC, a DSP, or a global mobility HR, global mobility department? Well, send us a list of your the locations where you move expats to. We'll put together an overview of the eco-friendlier choices of transportation by car that we can assist you with in those locations, whether it be hybrid or electric. I mean, we're delivering electric car chauffeur services in India, where you wouldn't think that that would be possible, but if it's outsourced to the driver to charge it every night, then it becomes a no-brainer. So there are options, there are creative things that we can do when it comes to transportation and other things, and then we can tailor that according to, of course, your needs. We are just at the contact details of the people who have been part of this, including Pavla, the sustainability manager. But if you want to reach out to me, here's my email address. I may also have spammed you over the last couple of weeks to get you invited here, so you may have already have it. But if you want to reach out to Dennis from Mobility Mastery in terms of policies and some brainstorming on that, some inspiration, then his details are here. And Stefan from People Mobility Alliance in terms of sustainability training, then reach out to Stefan. And again, you'll receive a copy of this presentation tomorrow. Any questions We have 9 minutes left for questions. Just put them in the chat or speak out loud. I know it was an overload of information. I know it's a lot to take in. And so if you have questions, want to kind of like digested all of this, then please feel free to reach out to me. But if you have a question right here now, then just unmute yourself and speak out.
Hi, Jesper. This is Teresa Flores from Premier Destination Services. Thank you so much for all this information. While you were saying all these things, repeatedly on my mind was, what do you think is the main challenge? Why we don't understand that there is another Earth to live in, that we're having this replacement planet that we're going to live in? What do you think is the main challenge that we don't understand, that we are impacting to our nature, that we are making big impacts from a very long time, and that we need to share that knowledge, to share that experience to, like you said, other generations? And yeah, it was repeatedly in my mind.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think everybody on this call would love to change and make less of a CO2 impact tomorrow. Habits are just so strong. And there's also the financial part of it. If you just bought like a fossil fuel car 2 years ago, it can be expensive to replace that. It comes at a cost sometimes to make these changes in your life. And that's why it goes slower, and why regulatory bodies, so government needs to push, and they need to push the companies with more resources to do better, because it is difficult on a personal level to make big changes in your life. And that's why, as I lay out here, is that we have a really unique opportunity. I know it's not the whole planet, but the people that we are moving, relocating, because they don't bring their old habits. It's difficult sometimes to install your old habits in your new surroundings. And if you are provided with new habits and new choices, new preferences, then it's a lot easier. But it really comes down to, for each and every one of us, it's cost, and it's being stuck in unsustainable habits that we have such a hard time to break. But yeah, I mean, we saw what happened today, and thank God that we have people on the expat ride team in the Tampa area, and they're all doing well. The evacuated, but we also have people where we are headquartered on the South Florida. They're also good, but we see the impact of not doing it fast enough. So yeah, if I had the answers, then I would definitely give it to you. But I think we have some good answers for us as an industry to do an impact through how we support and install the expats in the new locations. And there we can, at our own level, make a huge impact. Sorry, I didn't answer your question, I know.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, I understand. I understand perfectly.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a hard work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. We'll put it in white paper 3.0. We'll give you all the answers there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope, again, this inspired you.